So you heard what Fred had to say about the demand for Kenyan debt, but I mean, it's a completely different story when you're talking about Zambia. $750 million raised on Wall Street, and demand was extremely strong, almost $12 billion in terms of bids, so 15 times oversubscribed. Walk us through why you think the international community is so excited about Zambia.
Well, just looking at that, it is actually the biggest oversubscription on the African continent. Looking at everything, I mean, it was even bigger than Namibia and Nigeria. I think central to that is that the country's got low debt levels, it's got prudent macroeconomic policies, stable political regime as well counts hugely in its favor. I mean, the country has been had political stability ever since the 1980s. So those are key factors that obviously influence the whole equation here. But in addition to that, a lot of the people who took up the bond were US investors, and there was free money around floating around.
Because that was the next question I was going to ask you. I mean, is it just a case of good timing? Because you had the ECB coming to the market with their announcement of the bond buying program, Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke announcing quantitative easing 3, I think it was that night. And then, so all this, excitement and euphoria about new money in the system, do you think that was why we saw strong demand?
Well, that was part of the reason, but I think
the fundamentals, as you say, played into it.
But the fundamentals, if one can point to quite a few, is that the country is only a handful of B+ rated countries on the continent. In addition to that, is one of the few very good B+ externally rated countries. So I think that counted hugely in the country's favor. But I mean, they've got the money now. I think the key challenge is, what do they do with it, and how are they going to spend it?
Let's just quickly talk about where that bond is trading now, a few days after being listed. I know that Ghana's 2017 Euro bond sitting with a yield now of 4.8%, and the yield last week, Thursday, sitting 5.625%. Have we seen it come down?
Yes, the yield has come down. Yesterday, it was trading at about 5.14%. Now, if you compare that to how much the market was pricing it at on Thursday, which is 5.62%, there's really good sentiment surrounding this Eurobond. It shows that the market actually likes the country. In fact, if one can look at it in another way and say Spanish yields are about 5.6%, and that is a triple B roundabout rated, externally rated country. So just to compare the two, I mean, you can already see that they are assigning more of a risk premium on Spain than they are on Zambia.
Which perhaps makes sense at this point in time with all the uncertainty. But let's talk about Zambia, because you've just got back from the Copperbelt region. What's your sense as to how the economy is doing, in particular how the mining sector is at this point, with all the concerns that we have around China specifically?
Well, there's quite a lot of positive energy in the mining sector. If we look at the copper price, at where it is, a lot of the mining houses are quite optimistic. If the copper price remains quite elevated at these levels, they're going, the
So are they expanding? They're putting money into their mines, they're spending money, they're growing in order to meet the increased demand that they're seeing?
Yes, they are expanding. In fact, the mining sector is expected to take up a larger share of GDP over the next 3 years, from 10% currently to around 15%. And I think a lot of that positive energy is going to have spin-offs on the other sectors. Construction is going to start booming. You'll see real estate for the miners or the mining, or spin-offs for the economic activity as well. You'll see private consumption being supported. And obviously the other indirect effects, such as indirect taxes paid by the mines, PAYE. We'll see VAT as well, the suppliers around the mines. So it's really a positive story. And
that also feeds into the question around, spending money appropriately. The government, does it have the capacity to now spend the $750 million from the Eurobond issue? Does it have the capacity to spend the revenues coming in from the increased tax base appropriately?
So that is actually now the key question, and that is the more difficult part, rather than getting the money. So they have to have project plans in place to build whatever it is, infrastructure, roads. What would be nice to see is a project pipeline that outlines by when they'll spend the money and how they're going to spend it, and how they're more especially going to pay the money back from all these infrastructure expenditure that they're planning. So roads, perhaps they could think of ways of tolling roads and creating a sinking fund so that in 10 years' time, the money is repaid and they don't have to struggle with that.
When it comes to the infrastructure on the ground, though, I mean, how good are the roads at the moment? How good is the supporting infrastructure for businesses and perhaps businesses wanting to go into Zambia, rather?
Well, if you look at it on a relative basis in the region, it has some of the more better infrastructure, roads more especially. But if you look at, say, supportive infrastructure on a comprehensive basis, there is no railway system. So there's more a reliance on the roads. So naturally, roads would have a shorter lifespan in the country.
And
but
more costly for businesses.
Yes, very costly. But what is also positive is to see that government is taking it seriously. They're spending some money, and they've got obviously the appetite to fix this problem.
And as I think one Zambian newspaper titled it, "The sun shining on Zambia" during that Eurobond auction. So it seems there's a lot of positivity around the economy at this point. Brian Dlamini, Sovereign Risk Analyst at RMB.